Shalom. I'm Rabbi Josh Caruso, joined with my colleague, Rabbi Rob Nosenchuk from Congregation Mishkan Or. We are here to walk with family members to shepherd them through this time. I know how grateful they are that you are here with them. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream to be and oh to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. Dear God, this day be with us. Wrap us in your presence like a blanket and comfort our saddened souls. May the grieving family find solace in the love they share, in the devotion of friends and community, and in the knowledge of your sheltering presence. God, console us all in the faith that Joan lives on among us, in every family celebration, in each of our smiling memories, in her devotion to friends and family. Dear God, Shomea Tefillot, hear our prayers. Find favor in our dear one, who is beloved to so many, a treasured presence, so cherished and admired. Shower your presence upon her, and may she be welcomed into your presence. And we say together, Amen. At this time, family members want to share some words. Representing will be Tyler, and then Ellen, and then Brett.
For those of you who don't know me personally, my name is Tyler. I'll be speaking on behalf of my siblings, Matthew and Danielle. Thank you all for coming. It really means so much to our family. We're all a little surprised to be here. Our grandma Joan, who we fondly called Yaya, was the fittest 87-year-old you've ever seen. She could out-bike, out-swim, and out-power walk us all. We often joke that she'd be eulogizing us at our own funerals. Most people aren't lucky enough to grow up so close to their grandparents. Matthew, Danielle, and I enjoy that privilege. Family was always incredibly important to Yaya. She and our grandfather Byron, who we called Bye-Bye, shared a wonderful 64-year marriage, setting a great example for a successful relationship, one I hope to emulate in my own. Yaya and Bye-Bye raised two sons, our Uncle Mark, whom we miss dearly, and our awesome dad, Brett. Sorry, this is very hard. Okay. Through Uncle Mark and our Aunt Michelle's loving marriage, my siblings and I were blessed with three incredible cousins, Alan, Tara, and Ross. Yaya was central in bringing our extended families together. Sorry. I want to do well for Yaya. Yaya was central in bringing our extended families together through frequent dinners at Yaya and Bye-Bye's house in Walden, yearly trips to the Outer Banks in North Carolina, a family cruise, and a 20-team trip to Bermuda to celebrate their 60th wedding anniversary. It was a really wonderful trip. After I graduated from Shaker Heights High School, an alma mater I shared, my siblings and I shared with Yaya, which I always thought was incredibly cool. We were fourth generation. She and Bye-Bye took Tara and me on a trip to Japan. The time we spent together was such a gift. I love seeing how deeply Yaya and Bye-Bye engaged with the world around them. There wasn't a single thing Yaya didn't do on that trip except eat sushi. That was her red line. Yaya loved to see the world and made it her mission to make it a better place, both passions that she shared with my grandfather. She was a supporter of organizations like Planned Parenthood, an advocate for civil and equal rights, and while personally frugal, an incredibly charitable person. Yaya was also committed to supporting our dreams in education. She and Bai Bai were present at every graduation and major life event. I know she was so excited to be attending my sister Danielle's college graduation next month. Her presence will be deeply missed, though she'll be celebrating with us in spirit. Matthew remembers Yaya as matter of fact about everything because she cared about not wasting people's time. She was straight to the point and honest, real and genuine. As a kid, I found this incredibly intimidating, but grew to admire Yaya's strong personality, a sentiment shared by my sister Danielle. Yaya was always welcoming and a wonderful host as long as you didn't make noise past her strict 9 o'clock bedtime. Yaya recently shared with my cousin Ross that she had no regrets. What a wonderful way to live. Even though she's gone, we are so happy that her last weeks were spent doing what she loved, traveling with family. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Ooh, having glasses. Very tough for crying. Oh, okay. We'll always remember Yaya's love of Breyer's mint chocolate chip ice cream, the homemade brownies she sent us every birthday, her yellow rubber cleaning gloves, and the food at the bottom of her freezer that had been there since before we were born. That is not an exaggeration. It really was. It truly feels like we've lost the matriarch of the Krantz clan, even as we mourn the loss of our grandmother, Yaya. We feel incredibly fortunate to have had her in our lives. We hope to live up to her incredible legacy of charity, love of family, and quiet strength. One that made all of us feel safe, supported, and loved. Thank you.
The natural order of things is that parents name their children, but the rules get broken when it comes to grandparents, and just as my parents named me, I named our Yaya. Our Yaya was consistent. At Memorial Day barbecues, we could count on eating corn pudding, salad with poppy seed dressing, and brownies with Breyer's mint chocolate chip ice cream for dessert. She made the same iced tea recipe for decades that Ross loved. Mornings with Yaya when we visited were one of the most sacred parts of the day. It meant reading the newspaper together, eating a long breakfast, and listening to classical music. It was coffee with a vanilla protein shake instead of creamer. Yaya was a voracious reader. She always went to the library and was actively part of 3 book clubs. Her favorite genre was historical fiction. She had a to-read list, which she filled with book recommendations that she found in newspapers. She checked the Dow every morning. She was engaged in the world and was a lifelong learner. After Bai Bai passed, she told us that one of the things she missed most was having political conversations with him. Yaya loved to travel, and she inspired a sense of adventure in all of her grandchildren. She took Ross and Danielle to the Canadian Maritimes, where she outpaced people 15 years younger than her on a hike through Cape Breton. On hot days in Japan with Tyler and Tara, she would walk around the country with her cooling towel around her neck, a tip she picked up from a local while traveling in Egypt. Growing up, we viewed Yaya and all of her peculiar quirks as unique. For her 70th birthday, our family made a mock National Geographic-style documentary featuring Yaya as an endangered species. However, so much of Yaya's practicality and dependability was reflected in our dad, Mark. And 3 weeks ago, when I traveled with Yaya to South America, I became more aware of how many of Yaya's lifelong traits we share as well. I'm a creature of habit, she told me as she spread all-natural peanut butter over her 8th apple in as many days. Can't relate, I replied, cracking the 7th hard-boiled egg I had for breakfast that week. You're stubborn, my dear, she told me when I insisted on returning to the ship with her on a particularly hot day. Wonder where I got it from, I think, as she'd led me up our 5th flight of stairs for dinner. When I tried to sass the entitled people who sat in the first seats on our tenders to shore, forcing everyone to squeeze past them on a rocking boat, the only thing that stopped me was Yaya's hand on my knee. They won't learn, she said. But Yaya was not one to suffer fools. She, too, hated braggarts and people who complained when they had every reason in the world not to. When a man at our dinner table griped about his high-floor suite not having a bathtub, Yaya didn't miss a beat and turned to his wife, offering, well, he can come use ours on 7. Over the course of my trip with Yaya, I borrowed her nail file. We shared gum. She used my pen, and we crowded under the same umbrella. I put her stuff in my backpack. We would read side by side. At night, she would grab us 2 little spoons, and we'd eat dessert, rarely finishing one. What mattered to Yaya was quality time, and because she was no drama, she could just give us the space to be. When we would visit her in the Bahamas or Florida, she would leave the beach in the mid-afternoon, but was perfectly understanding when we wanted to stay until sunset. What mattered was that we were there together. Throughout the trip, Yaya and I journaled, both simultaneously and separately. And I'll leave you with the last entry in Yaya's journal, which sums up the trip for me as well. Great trip. Loved the company.
I took Tyler's water. I am Brett, one of Joan's sons. Before I specifically talk about Mom, I want to divert for a moment to the grand mysteries of the universe. You got time, don't you? First, while this is a sad day for my family, it's also a wonderful day. At 3:33 this morning, my mom's grandnephew and his wife welcomed the baby boy into this world. His grandmother's right there. He'll be named after Mom. Second, I need to tell you a story. While in Brazil, there were moments between the administrative and bureaucratic responsibilities we needed to accomplish, Helen and I. One morning, we had half a day waiting for others to complete their work before we could accomplish the next step we needed to come home with Mom. We didn't think that sitting in a hotel room was a particularly good mental health strategy. So we arranged for a quick tour of Brasilia, Brazil, the capital of the country, built from scratch out of the desert in the 60s. So we got in with a guide, and the very first place he took us to was a large museum built to honor the city and the Brazilian president who moved the capital. The name of the museum was named after him. As we drove down the boulevard toward the museum, we saw large flags flying everywhere with the name of the museum on it. As we entered the museum, there were beautiful rugs embroidered with its name. So while waiting to bring Joan Krantz home, we disbelievingly entered the museum called the J.K. Memorial. We just looked at each other. The mysteries of the universe, indeed. I struggled hard to come up with the right adjective to describe Mom. Born after the Depression into a family that went through a divorce, she was frugal, yes. She really did spend $3 in gas to save 2 cents a gallon. She really did, when my parents visited Tyler, who was going to the University of Michigan, order broccoli for dinner. Just broccoli. She then sent it back twice because it wasn't prepared correctly. When she finally got it correct, she took the leftovers back to the hotel. And then the next morning, she put them in the car to drive back to Cleveland. That last part even made my father laugh. She was also stoic, a rock for the family when we lost Mark. She took care of my dad mentally at that time, and other times. Basically having to teach him to relax and disconnect, something he was not great at doing until finding the serenity of Abaco when my parents were in their late 60s and 70s. She obviously, for those who knew them, also took care of him physically when he began to have difficulty doing it himself. But after thinking about it, I realized that the right word for her was straightforward. You always knew where you stood with Joan, for better or worse. She loved her family and friends deeply, but diplomacy was not a tool in her personal toolbox. Diplomacy was not a tool she wanted to exercise, but other types of exercise she embraced. Water was her happy place, whether being around it or in it. So the fact that she swam her whole life, barely slowing down after the age of 85, was very mom. She was, as someone in my family described her, getting old, but not elderly. A few weeks ago, when my wife Liz and my sister-in-law Michelle convinced me to go surprise her for her birthday, she apologized to me after we walked 4 miles in the 80-degree weather because we had to go back to run an errand. I was grateful. Her leaving this world is sad and surprising, but she really did go out almost exactly the way she would have scripted. Almost because she would have preferred that her quick sickness had come on without a loved one being around. Because being straightforward, she would not have wanted to add any additional stress or emotional pain to anyone else. And on her last trip with Ellen, on one of her last days on this earth, just the day before falling ill, she had hiked up the 200 stairs to Christ the Redeemer. Bet that's never been said in this room before. The Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio de Janeiro. We will miss you, Mom, Joan, Yaya. Please be kind and love those around you. Embrace the times you have and revel in the memories that make someone not just a friend or family, but a loved one.
Eli, Eli, שלא ייגמר לעולם, החול וחיים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. החול וחיים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, החול וחיים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. These words from the late Hannah Senesh speak of a prayer that might have been held in Joan's heart. She would hope that as long as our lives live, that the sand and the sea and the rush of the waters that gave her such joy, that they'd continue always. A reminder to ride the waves that come to us, especially when they're rough, and to hold together and come back to shore. El Harachamam, sweet God, if you are there, we pray you take good care of Joan. She's got a few questions for you. God has given us an incredible legacy in this family by humble and thoughtful human and humane beings like Joan Krantz, who knew what our sages taught in Kohelet, there is a time for each thing, time for every experience under heaven. There's a time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant, a time to uproot the planted, a time to destroy, a time for healing, a time to tear down, a time to build up, time to weep and a time to laugh, time to wail and a time to dance, a time to throw stones, a time to gather them, a time to embrace, and a time to pause from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to discard, a time to tear, a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. There is a time for war, may it be swift, and a time for peace. And this is the time we remember and know that Joan has found peace. Dear friends, as we continue with reflections today after such beautiful, incredible tributes of a person whose life and purpose was very crystal clear. Purpose-driven, secure life that radiated that for her spouse, for her siblings, for her parents, for her children, for her grandchildren, for nieces and nephews. This is the glue of an incredibly stuck-together family. They will have interment today privately, but they would invite you to join them for Shiva as they will receive friends at, well, my house is called Danielle's house, at Danielle Krantz's house, 29 Lyman Circle, Shaker Heights, Ohio. Today, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. and from 6:30 to 8:30. As was mentioned earlier, and I want to echo this, those who wish to honor her memory, please, of course, come, offer your gestures of condolence, your love, your stories. Help them put this all together again with your stories and reflections. But Joan wants you to make a donation to Planned Parenthood. A generous donation. And to do personal mitzvot, acts of kindness for someone in need. This will be one of the best ways to provide comfort and care to all who remember her with love. I know each of us tries to count each day as precious. I try. I imagine you do. It's not simple to teach a person to live in accordance with this Jewish value, which is repeatedly admonished. We are admonished many times toward attaining a reputation for filling our days and our hands with acts of blessing. Late in the Torah, in Deuteronomy, we read, Hayom hazeh nehiyeta la'am la'Adonai le'elohecha. This day is the day you became the people of the Eternal One. The medieval sage Rashi explains in his commentary that each day of your life should be seen, as in that text, as this day, meaning today, in the context that every single today we get is seen by Judaism as a sacred opportunity to build ties that bind and a record of which to be proud. I think this teaching is apropos to set an intention for a tribute to Joan Krantz, a remarkable, humane being, a worthy role model, deep into her 9th decade in life. Seems to me that I've held such admiration and mutual respect for the last portion of her life, of someone who shunned spotlight moments, most especially during the greater part of the years of her extraordinary marriage to Bye-Bye. I'm not sure she called him Bye-Bye, except in your presence, right? Once Ellen told her that's his name. That's right. She moved in a stealth way to make a special impact and difference on loved ones, friends, communities of meaning and shared purpose. She was not Byron's silent partner. She was as involved as he in quiet, courageous activism to thoughtfully integrate schools, to reduce racial conflict in Shaker Heights, where incidentally, as was mentioned, this is a fourth-generation family, as high school graduates, I should say, in Shaker. And she raised Mark and Brett as the primary caregiving parent. They knew a mom who emphasized practicality and decision-making, carried with them pretty much a no-nonsense attitude, if one can manage to do that with Brett Krantz as a child. I've known him since 2010, but I believe there are people here who've known him longer. I'm pretty sure that raising him might have raised her blood pressure a few times. But one of the things that Brett told me he most admired in his mom and the gift of having her so long was that, yeah, she had some strict parental guidance, dinner table rules, etiquette, but she also allowed for him or for Mark to occasionally petition her, the judge and jury of each of their cases at home, to act on their own individual spark and drive. And sometimes the case clinched. Strong future attorneys that they were, they each had their own skill set to apply to their mom. And she taught them through example what it means to be a good sibling to one another, to balance strict judgment and mercy when they became parents. Brett says he so loves marveling on his mom's ability to see him and Mark growing up and each of the grandchildren and everybody's kids as their own individual person on a path of their own. In this family, as a yaya, she could be seen taking notice of individual attributes and not contrasting them or pointing to other kids you might emulate. She modeled that in friendships and with family as well. I do remember a conversation I had with her 12 or 13 years ago in the Fairmount Temple Auditorium at intermission of one of the Playmakers productions that Tara or Danielle and my kids were in, telling Joan how, as a family friend, I took notice of all the special relationships between grandkids, siblings, cousins, aunts, and uncles. It was kind of a system. It was as easy to see Mark chauffeuring Danielle or picking up Tyler after Ross was as likely as to be picked up by Liz, grabbing dinner before a show and Michelle bringing over the food. It was just kind of a balanced system somehow. Anyway, she told me that one of the things that made her happiest was how woven together were her family's lives. That's especially true because she adopted as daughters of her own Liz and Michelle. Honestly, who wouldn't take that opportunity if Liz and Michelle married into your family? Let's get real. But she modeled that closeness and did so around to the generations of her own with her brother and sister-in-law David and Dee, who testified to all of us by speakerphone when we met yesterday about measuring the loss of a really incredible sister. And the two of them, how they had comforted each other and mourned after the loss of their late sister Diane. This was also radiated to me by Cindy, her niece via Diane's family, and her kids who have known in Joan an incredible aunt, another mom in their life, values that are eternal, and who knows that her mom shared her siblings in a loving childhood home. Joan grew up in a place destined to be bettered through her and Byron and later other children and grandchildren in Shaker Heights on Lomond Boulevard. David remembers a sister as someone who was stoic then too, and hard to imagine losing it. Apparently, a car accident that she had at 16 was enough to shake her. And although the crash wasn't her doing, to no one's surprise here, she was harder on herself. She would talk about taking rides in a remarkable Chevy during her childhood with her siblings, freeing and joyful memories with David and Diane. At high school, she took great interest and later a leadership role, even coaching, because she had truly mastered the sport and art of synchronized swimming. She'd later get involved with these groups as a parent and even into grandparenthood, participating actively, raising support and funds for Shaker Heights girls and boys teams and synchronized swimming fundraisers. Excuse me for waxing poetic, but as I told everyone yesterday, my wife Joni was a beneficiary of this. I know the synchronized swimming is an art and a sport, and that all that she did reminds me that I'm just a sucker for two different Joans from Shaker who can do great things in the pool. It is ultimately clear, though, that one of the most fortuitous things that a young Joan, young enough then to be called young, old enough to be a staff member and swimming specialist, took a role on the staff of the Red Wing Day Camp, where Joan Krantz was scheduled to be head counselor. Perfectly apropos, Joan's role was down and dirty and hands-on, improving swimming for each kid. But at the end of camp, everybody's congratulating the head counselor on what a great job camp was and how he did. That they found one another at Red Wing Day Camp and formed a bond and took it right out of camp into school and life and marriage. Well, it made more sense for her as well to throw herself into the building of a home and a family ethic with Byron. In their initial years of marriage, their wedding followed by a honeymoon in Chicago. The two of them tried to live very modestly and to keep up with the bills and the opportunities to save for their kids' future. The Vincents, the Friedmans, and Rapp families formed deep ties in a circle of friendship and support for one another, and also playing bridge with one another, saving a few bucks by supporting each other, and embarking on multi-generational activities. These were foundational memories she helped lay for Brett and Mark, and she knew it. She knew just what she was doing. She also joined Byron in dreaming of a time when they would be able to launch off the rocket pad of Shaker to travel, and I mean travel, a lot. 75 different countries in a long and loving marriage. Joan loved to travel, had a passion for seeing the perspective of new vistas. Now that we know that even though her body may in some way have known different, Joan's heart and soul were still in the spirit of adventure and curiosity to see more things, in this case, to see them in the company of a remarkable granddaughter, sharing that passion and seeing Brazil. It seems to me that the inclusion, though, of kids and grandkids on family cruises, visits to homes they enjoyed at different times in their life in Bahamas and in Naples, and an individualized travel like Tyler was speaking of, with pairs of teenage grandkids. This was her and Byron's way of taking their growing to adult grandchildren into following their own passions. Yaya and Bye-Bye wanted to be sure that each grandchild got the opportunity to see up close and personal their grandparents' replenishing energy and seeing new and far-flung cities across the globe on their own. If their life was the Wizard of Oz, you could say that Byron and Joan were not landlocked to Kansas. They preferred finding their match and their joy somewhere over the rainbow, in every nook and cranny of Oz. I know they'll go to the Emerald City. Watch out, Wizard. Danielle remembers matching T-shirts everyone wore for their 50-year and 50-year anniversary and 70-year birthday cruise that they took with the entire family, including, if they wished, Michelle's folks and Liz's folks. It's not like Joan was a puzzle to figure out for grandkids on trips they shared. Wherever their bodies have roamed across the globe, As Brett said, Joan's happy place was beside the waters, leaning over a sandbar to help one of her grandkids find the perfect shell or piece of sea glass to discover, to treasure, to take home, and to be part of quite a collection. She was fairly predictable that way. Ellen tells the story of a very special birthday when her otherwise frugal Yaya approached Ellen with the idea of taking a birthday shopping spree. It's hard to surprise Ellen, her eyebrows raised, which what sounded like fun, to go out and get new stuff. Yaya, when they arrived at the store, said their spending limit was $25. And she got a shirt and a pair of socks on that grand spree. Still, once into an activity with a grandchild, such as seasonal outings to Cedar Point or Great Adventure, Joan would be seen as the one dragging the other generations in her family for one more ride on the Mean Streak, or to fall with fright on the Demon Drop. I've come to realize, just through friendship and following her family through temple and Jewish life, that my admiration that I wear on my sleeve for each and every parent in the Krantz family, it had a source. It came from the excellent, sensitive, encouraged, and loving integrity of Joan Krantz. Mark and Brett and Byron all sensed that there was something unique and special about her pursuing life and its goals the way she did. They did so with exceptional loyalty to their temple, suburban temple colony, other critical causes and organizations they'd come to believe were making the world more safe and fair and just. In their quiet but filled with conviction manner, Joan was a living embodiment of what we call Kedushat Hazman, the ability to pay attention to the holiness in each moment. That was already illustrated, but I do want to share that in the practicality manner that just weeks before the trip to Brazil, I believe Ross and Danielle were at her home in Florida with her, enjoying and playing, but there were two things posted to the refrigerator. Oh, and Tara was there too. See, I was guessing what I remember here. Two things on the fridge, a beautiful picture of a handsome Byron, and her do not resuscitate orders. She was clear. When it came time, she would be ready, as you can be. That play and lighthearted teasing, playful banter came from each of her kids and kids-in-law and grandkids. She nevertheless had energy for high-impact adventures like she was taking with Ellen in recent weeks, and it's extraordinary. As hard as it is that she died on that trip, it sure seems to me that if it hadn't been for her getting sick on that trip, she'd already be here right now planning where we're going next. Kedushat Hazman, sacredness in time. Not knowing how many days you have ahead, go grab them. Be informed by Joan Krantz. Go to your grandkids' playing fields, their chapel talks, their B'nai Mitzvah. Get out to graduations and cheer from them from beyond as more graduations and achievements are yet to come. Be part of life. The psalmist teaches that our span of years could be only 70. And even if more, every one of those years will include trouble and sorrow. And so we are bidden by the psalmist to count each day precious. That we count days precious in order to acquire a heart of wisdom. It's Joan's heart of wisdom, her Lev Chochmah, that we salute today. But I know that it's difficult to recognize as the remaining survivor of your family of origin. Our hearts are in kinship with you. We all see you, our friend, with whom we pledge solidarity, Joan and Byron's son. Mark's brother, carrying an incredible legacy forward. Reflections today will include that we're still in the midst of the Passover holiday, a day when we yearn for our spirits to be free. Perhaps today, as the concluding prayers of this service occur, you might see it as a moment where we're not just parting with, her physical nearness to us, but that we're drawing close because it's free to be with us. All of her values, the things she stood for, those don't get buried. They stay in our hearts. May they be wise. Zecher tzadika livracha, may this righteous human being continue to be a blessing. Amen.
Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh 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 shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. We just shared Seder together, and one of those iconic moments is opening up the door for Elijah, known to be the only prophet whose death was never recorded in our Holy Scriptures. Elijah brings with him a sense of hope, messianic hope. The spirit of our loved ones joins us in these moments, in these challenging moments, accompanies us in our days. So today we think about Joan and those whose deaths preceded her. We remember Diane and Byron and Mark. Perhaps in some way, Elijah's carrying them with him. Possibility, mystery. We think of them as we continue with the chanting of El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer. We invite you to rise as you are able. Malei Rachamim, shochein במרומים, עמסי מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים מותרים, כזוהר רקיע מזהירים, את נשמת ג'ון בת אדוארד ורות, שלחה לעולמה, בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור החיים את נשמתה, אדוני ונחלתה, ותנוח בשלום. נקום על משכבה ונאמר Amen. God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of our loved one who has gone into eternity find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace, together with the holy and the pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold Joan close to you forever, so that her soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May she find a home with you. May she rest in peace with her loved ones. And together we say, Amen. As we move to the conclusion of our service, once again, as Rabbi Nosenchuk shared, family will be receiving friends at the home of Brett and Liz, 29 Lyman Circle. That's today, from 2 to 5, and from 6:30 to 8:30. And as also was mentioned, Joan believed greatly in tzedakah, and those who wish to honor her memory may make a donation to Planned Parenthood or to a charity of their choice to do a personal mitzvah for someone in need. The memorial interment will be private, and at this time, our service concludes.